You see, human beings are endlessly complex, but not endlessly opaque when it comes to love, especially the kind men feel. What's spoken aloud is often the least reliable metric. Men are not always consciously hiding their interest. Rather, they are bound by the deeper architecture of their own psychology. That architecture leaks through their movements. Firstly, notice proximity. If he finds reasons, unnecessary ones, to close the distance between you and him, that's not mere coincidence. Human beings guard their personal space instinctively. So when a man quietly gives you more of it, he's making an unconscious investment. Second, look for mirroring. When he subtly copies your gestures, your tone, or even your posture, it's a primal way of establishing rapport. This isn't strategy, it's biology. Third, watch for directed attention. If he scans a room and returns his gaze to you again and again, it's not simply observation, it's prioritization. Fourth, there's protective behavior. A slight step in front of you in a crowd, checking if you're comfortable in your seat. It's not grand heroics, it's instinctive guardianship. Fifth, nervous self-adjustments. Straightening his shirt, touching his hair, adjusting his watch. These are not vanity. They're pining behaviors, the same kind you see across the animal kingdom when one creature is drawn to another and sixth lingering presence. He could leave, but he doesn't. That's perhaps the simplest yet most powerful sign. He chooses to remain in your company when nothing compels him to. The challenge here isn't spotting one sign. It's recognizing the pattern. One move can be coincidence. Two moves can be politeness. But when you see them together woven into a consistent thread, you're not dealing with random chance. You're observing a man's inner world expressing itself despite his best attempts at composure. Because in the end, love, real human love, doesn't arrive with fireworks or speeches. It announces itself quietly in movements so small you could miss them entirely unless you've trained yourself to see. Body language is not merely an accessory to communication. It is the deep ancient bedrock beneath it. When a man experiences feelings of attraction, affection, or romantic interest, those feelings almost always bypass his carefully constructed verbal filters. The words he speaks might be cautious, diplomatic, or even evasive, but the body will often act independently, revealing the truth in ways the conscious mind cannot fully control. This is because the roots of human communication predate language by hundreds of thousands of years. Our ancestors didn't first express themselves through carefully chosen words. They expressed themselves through movement, facial expression, posture, and distance. These physical signals became so ingrained in the human nervous system that even today they remain the most authentic indicators of emotion. When a man is interested in someone, proximity becomes one of the most telling clues. In everyday life, people maintain an invisible bubble of personal space. This bubble exists to protect one's physical and emotional comfort, but attraction subtly redefines these boundaries. If he consistently moves closer, not in an intrusive way, but in small, seemingly accidental increments, it often reflects a gravitational pull toward the person who has caught his attention. He may stand closer than he does with others, lean in when speaking, or choose a seat that puts him within arm's reach. Each of these movements might seem casual, but they are guided by a deeper instinctual desire to be near. Importantly, this proximity is not always conscious. Many men do not even realize they are doing it. It happens before the mind can form a deliberate choice. This closeness is accompanied by another subtle cue: orientation. It's not just the distance that matters, but the way his body positions itself relative to yours. A man who is interested will often face you directly, shoulders squared, torso aligned, feet pointed toward you. This kind of orientation communicates priority. Even in a room filled with other people, his body's geometry is a quiet declaration that you are the focal point. In contrast, when interest is absent, a man's body will orient elsewhere, as if ready to disengage at any moment. Another dimension of body language as a truth teller lies in the micro expressions. Those fleeting, almost imperceptible changes in the face, a slight softening of the eyes, a quick upward twitch of the lips before a smile forms, or even a widening of the pupils can betray interest long before words are exchanged. These micro expressions are regulated by the limbic system, the emotional core of the brain. which does not operate under conscious control. That's why they are so reliable. They appear and disappear in fractions of a second, often too quickly for the man to disguise. Touch also serves as a critical indicator, though it often starts subtly. A light touch on the arm during conversation, a guiding hand on the small of the back when walking through a crowded space, or even an accidental brush of the fingers can signal attraction. In modern social contexts, touch is carefully moderated due to personal boundaries and social norms, which makes it all the more significant when it occurs naturally and frequently. If a man seeks physical contact, even in the smallest, most socially acceptable ways, it is usually a reflection of an internal longing for connection. What makes body language such a powerful revealer of truth is that it operates on multiple channels simultaneously. The nervous system coordinates countless small actions: where the eyes go, how the shoulders sit, whether the arms are open or crossed, how quickly or slowly a person speaks. A man in love or deep interest will often exhibit a general openness, shoulders back rather than hunched, arms uncrossed, and gestures that seem to invite rather than repel. His movements may also slow down slightly, as though time has taken on a different rhythm in your presence. There's also the question of mimicry, which ties directly into this principle. When a man subconsciously mirrors your body language, adopting similar gestures, posture, or speech cadence, it's not a calculated move. It's an ancient bonding mechanism signaling rapport and mutual comfort. In essence, his body is saying, we are aligned. We are in sync. This mirroring can happen within seconds of interaction, and once noticed, it can be one of the clearest signs of genuine connection. Importantly, body language as a subconscious truth. Teller also involves the eyes. Eye contact is not just about looking, it's about how long he looks, how often he returns his gaze to you, and whether that gaze softens or intensifies depending on the context. A man's pupils dilate when he sees something or someone he finds pleasing. His gaze may linger a second longer than necessary, or he might quickly look away, only to look back again, as if caught in a loop between restraint and desire. These signals are not foolproof in isolation. A man might stand close to you simply because the space is crowded. He might touch your arm because he's naturally tactile with everyone. He might hold eye contact because he's trained to do so in his profession. That's why reading body language effectively requires attention to patterns, not isolated gestures. When multiple signals, proximity, orientation, microexpressions, touch, mirroring, and gaze occur together consistently, the probability that they reflect genuine romantic interest increases dramatically. The underlying reason body language is such a consistent truth teller is that it bypasses the filters of self-conscious editing. Language can be rehearsed, manipulated, or even weaponized. Words can be chosen for strategy, for diplomacy, or for concealment. But body language emerges from the unconscious layers of the brain that evolved to ensure survival and reproduction. This is why even highly self-aware men who may wish to hide their feelings often leak those feelings through posture, facial expression, and movement. In evolutionary terms, these cues developed long before humans could sit across from each other and exchange complex sentences. Early humans relied on them to signal attraction, establish trust, and coordinate social bonds within the group. A tilt of the head, a softening of the stance, or an inviting gesture could mean the difference between acceptance and rejection. The fact that these cues remain potent today is a testament to their biological and psychological durability. Recognizing these signals requires not just passive observation, but a trained awareness. Most people move through social interactions distracted, thinking about their next words, or preoccupied with their own insecurities. To truly see the truth in a man's body language, one must quiet that internal noise and become a student of subtlety. It's about catching the small lean toward you when you speak, noticing that his feet remain pointed in your direction, even when his head turns to address someone else, or recognizing that he maintains a slightly longer pause before leaving your side than is strictly necessary. Ultimately, body language is an unfiltered stream from the mind's hidden depths to the surface of behavior. If you can read it accurately, you can bypass the noise of social politeness and self-protection and glimpse the raw, unvarnished reality of someone's feelings. And in the realm of romantic interest, that reality is often expressed most clearly in the smallest, quietest movements, the ones he isn't even aware he's making. Small behaviors often carry enormous meaning, especially when it comes to romantic interest. In fact, the signals that reveal the most about a man's feelings are frequently the ones that seem too trivial to matter until you look closely. These are the micro behaviors, the fleeting gestures, subtle shifts, and seemingly inconsequential actions that operate below the level of deliberate control. They are like cracks in the surface of a carefully maintained fast aid, offering glimpses of what lies beneath. While words can be chosen with caution and major actions can be calculated, micro behaviors emerge from automatic processes in the brain. They are not rehearsed, not staged, and often not noticed by the person expressing them. That's why they are so valuable to an observer. They carry the weight of truth precisely because they are unfiltered. One of the most common examples of this is micro expressions. A man might maintain a polite smile in conversation, but in the milliseconds before that smile fully forms, you might catch the corners of his mouth twitching upward in a way that feels spontaneous and involuntary. Or his eyebrows might lift ever so slightly when he first sees you, a signal of recognition and positive surprise. The entire interaction might last less than half a second, but in that moment, his subconscious has broadcast a signal of genuine pleasure at your presence. These micro expressions are regulated by the limbic system, the part of the brain that deals with emotions and survival instincts. Because this system acts faster than the conscious mind, its signals leak through before a person can mask them. Another micro behavior is what might be called micro-orientation. This refers to the subtle ways his body positions itself toward you without overtly moving closer. For example, his knee might turn in your direction even when his torso is facing forward, or his upper body might angle toward you in a group setting while he's still speaking to someone else. These shifts are barely noticeable in the moment, but they indicate where his attention and by extension his emotional investment truly lies. The conscious mind might not be thinking, I'm going to turn toward her now, but the body is already aligning to optimize connection. Fidgeting is another revealing micro behavior, though it's often misunderstood. Nervousness is commonly associated with disinterest or discomfort. But in the context of romantic attraction, it can also signify heightened awareness and a desire to make a good impression. If a man frequently adjusts his watch, touches his hair, straightens his shirt, or smooths down his jacket in your presence, these movements may be less about vanity and more about unconscious self-presentation. Across the animal kingdom, courtship often involves pining. Birds fluff their feathers. Cats groom themselves. And humans are no different. A man may not realize that he's straightening his posture or subtly checking his reflection when you arrive. But those small acts signal a readiness to be seen in his best light. Eye behavior is perhaps the richest category of micro signals. Most people think of eye contact in terms of duration. Looking longer equals more interest, but the truth is far more nuanced. The micro movements of the eyes can reveal focus, attraction, and emotional state. For example, rapid blinking can be a sign of heightened arousal or nervous excitement. Pupillary dilation is a physiological reaction to seeing something pleasing, and though it's subtle, it's also involuntary. A man might also engage in glance and return behavior, looking away for a moment to break the intensity of the gaze, only to return his eyes to you seconds later. This back and forth is a balancing act between attraction and self-regulation. Mirroring is another micro behavior that can slip under the radar. While mirroring can be obvious, copying someone's posture or gestures, it often occurs in miniature ways that are easy to miss. He might match your speaking pace without realizing it, or take a sip of his drink moments after you do. These are subconscious acts of alignment. Part of the brain's way of saying we are in sync. The reason mirroring is so telling is that it originates from empathy and connection. The nervous system subtly syncs up with another person's rhythm when emotional roar is high, creating an unspoken sense of unity. Voice changes can also serve as micro behaviors. While tone and volume shifts might seem like conscious choices, certain vocal patterns emerge instinctively when a man is speaking to someone he's interested in. His voice might lower slightly in pitch, become softer when addressing you directly, or take on a warmer timbre. These changes can occur without him planning them, triggered instead by the emotional context of the interaction. Even brief stumbles in speech, pauses, or laughter in moments that aren't especially funny can indicate an underlying desire to maintain a pleasant and memorable exchange. Another subtle sign involves attentional micro-gestures. These are small, almost imperceptible actions that indicate where his focus lies in real time. He might lean his head slightly toward you when you speak. Even in a noisy environment, he might subtly shift his weight from one foot to the other to face you more directly. He might stop what he's doing mid-task to listen more closely. Each of these micro-adjustments is a physical manifestation of mental prioritization. You have become the central point in his field of attention. In group settings, these micro-behaviors can be even more revealing because they occur when he doesn't believe you're watching him closely. For example, if you're in conversation with someone else, he might glance at you briefly, or his expression might change in reaction to your laughter or movement, even though he's not actively participating. These background reactions are significant because they are free from the pressure of direct interaction. They're glimpses of his unguarded state. What makes these micro behaviors so compelling as signals of attraction is that they are cumulative. A single fidget glance or posture shift can be explained away as coincidence or habit. But when you begin to notice them repeating, especially in combination, they form a pattern that points toward genuine emotional interest. This is why interpreting attraction through micro behaviors is more of an art than a science. It requires both keen observation and the patience to let patterns emerge over time. The psychological foundation for these signals lies in the brain's dual processing systems, the conscious and the subconscious. The conscious mind handles deliberate communication, choosing words, planning actions, but the subconscious governs the body's responses to emotional stimuli. Attraction, being a primal emotional state, activates the subconscious in powerful ways. A man might decide not to tell you he likes you, but he cannot as easily decide not to lean slightly closer, let his pupils widen, or match your posture. The truth of his feelings is embedded in these micro signals, waiting for someone attentive enough to notice. Reading these signals, however, is not without its challenges. People vary in their baseline behaviors. Some men are naturally more tactile, others are more animated, and some maintain strong eye contact with everyone regardless of interest. This is why context is everything. A man's micro behaviors must be compared not to general human behavior, but to his own behavior around others. If he fidgets more, smiles more quickly, or shifts his body toward you more often than he does with others, those differences carry meaning. Ultimately, micro behaviors are the threads that weave together the fabric of unspoken attraction. They are not declarations, but whispers, not overt gestures, but quiet leaks from the deeper currents of emotion. When you learn to notice them, not in isolation, but as part of a broader tapestry, you gain access to a kind of truth that words alone could never provide. And in a world where so much is filtered, guarded, and curated, that truth is rare enough to be worth seeking. Attention is the most valuable resource a human being can give because it is finite and tied directly to the deeper architecture of motivation. We live in a world where distractions compete endlessly for mental real estate, phones buzzing, screens flashing, tasks stacking up, and yet every moment of focus is a choice. When a man chooses to give his attention to someone, especially in a sustained and deliberate way, that choice is not casual. It is a statement of value. It's not simply about being physically present in the same space. It's about allocating mental and emotional bandwidth to another person when countless other demands could claim it. In the realm of romantic interest, attention becomes a kind of currency, one that can't be printed at will or spent without cost. It is paid out in eye contact that lingers just a little longer than necessary in listening without the pull to check a phone or glance around the room in remembering details you mentioned days or weeks earlier. These are not merely polite behaviors. They are investments. When a man remembers that you prefer your coffee a certain way, or that you have a big presentation coming up, he is not just demonstrating good manners. He is showing that your words occupy mental space long after the conversation ends. That is attention at work. And it is never accidental. This attention also shows itself in how he prioritizes time. Time is the clearest proof of value because it is the one resource we can't replenish. A man might be busy, most people are, but how he reorganizes his schedule or makes himself available reveals his hierarchy of importance. If he finds ways to see you, even when it's inconvenient, or shifts commitments to create opportunities for interaction, that's a concrete expression of interest. People make time for what they truly value. Everything else is a polite excuse. One of the most telling expressions of attention is active listening. There's a significant difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is passive. The sound waves enter the ear and register in the mind. Listening is active. It involves engagement, processing, and response. A man who is genuinely interested doesn't just nod while you talk. He asks followed-up questions, references past conversations, and shows curiosity about your perspective. His responses are not generic, but shaped by the specific things you've shared. This active engagement creates a feedback loop of trust and connection, signaling that your presence in his life is not interchangeable with anyone else's. Body orientation plays a role here as well. The man who gives real attention will often turn his whole body toward you when you speak. Even in casual settings, his shoulders, knees, and gaze will align with you as if there is no other focal point in the environment. He may lean in slightly, not in an overtly aggressive way, but as a physical cue that he is absorbing your words. These postural shifts are not just about comfort. They're about showing on a primal level that you have his full engagement. Attention also reveals itself in moments of choice, specifically in the small decisions he makes when faced with competing priorities. If you're in a group setting, does he choose to sit near you? When conversation fragments into smaller pockets, does he gravitate toward yours? If you're speaking and someone else interrupts, does he return the focus to you afterward? These micro decisions are the invisible architecture of sustained interest. They communicate, I want to be here with you in this moment without ever needing to be said aloud. Importantly, attention has both a conscious and unconscious component. Consciously, a man may decide to reach out, send a message, or check in on you. Unconsciously, his mind might simply drift toward you when he's in the middle of something else. That unconscious pull often shows up in the form of unexpected contact, sharing something that reminded him of you, asking about your day without a clear reason, or even just checking to see if you've eaten or gotten home safely. These gestures may appear small, but they're the surface ripples of a deeper current of thought. The reverse is also true. The absence of attention is a signal in itself. When someone consistently fails to remember what you've told them, doesn't follow up on your concerns, or never seems fully present when you speak, it's a sign that you occupy less space in their mental world. That's why attention is such a reliable indicator. It's not easy to fake over time. A man can feign interest for an hour, maybe even a few days, but sustained consistent attention requires genuine motivation. Without that motivation, it eventually fades. In romantic context, attention is often accompanied by an instinct to notice changes. A man who is truly paying attention will detect subtle shifts in your mood, your tone, or your behavior. He might ask if something is wrong before you've said a word, or comment that you seem tired or quieter than usual. This isn't a product of mind reading. It's a function of pattern recognition built over repeated observation. He knows what normal looks like for you. So deviations stand out. This level of attunement is impossible without a foundation of real sustained focus. This kind of attentiveness also has an element of protection in it. Not in the sense of grand cinematic rescues, but in small, quiet interventions. Holding a door without thinking, steering you away from an obstacle, checking the weather to suggest bringing a jacket. These are acts of situational awareness that arise because he's watching your context as well as your words. It's a form of care that manifests not through declarations, but through preparedness and anticipation. There's also an emotional dimension to attention that can't be overlooked. True attention involves not just tracking facts or noticing behaviors, but holding emotional space. When you share something vulnerable, a man who is genuinely invested will not only remember it, but will treat it as significant. He won't diminish your concerns or redirect the topic to himself. Instead, he will remain in that space with you, even if it's uncomfortable. That willingness to stay present in emotionally charged moments is one of the clearest markers of genuine connection. Over time, attention builds a kind of relational gravity. The more someone invested in you, the more it shapes the dynamic between you. It creates a sense of being seen, not just in passing, but in a sustained, deliberate way that affirms your importance in their inner world. This is why attention feels so deeply validating. It's a tacit acknowledgement that you matter enough to occupy scarce mental and emotional resources. In a culture where distraction is the default state, sustained attention is not just rare, it's a form of intimacy. The real skill in recognizing attention as a love signal lies in seeing it as a pattern, not a single act. One dinner date filled with good listening might be a fluke. 10 interactions where he consistently shows up with focus and follow through or not. The key is to observe not just how he behaves when the setting is designed for connection, but how he behaves in ordinary, unplanned moments. Attention that appears only when convenient is not the same as attention that persists when life is messy, busy, or stressful. Ultimately, the attention a man gives is one of the purest indicators of his genuine interest. Words can flatter, charm, or persuade, but they cost nothing and require little effort. Attention, by contrast, demands presence, sacrifice, and consistency. It is not just given, it is earned and maintained. And when you see a man repeatedly making the choice to focus on you in a world built to scatter focus, you can be almost certain that his interest is not an accident, but an intentional ongoing act. Recognizing recurring signs of attraction is not about playing detective in a single conversation. It's about developing the skill of pattern recognition over time. Human behavior is complex, and no single gesture or phrase can serve as absolute proof of romantic interest. People are influenced by mood, environment, stress, and countless other factors that can temporarily alter how they interact. This is why looking for patterns is so critical. A pattern is not a moment, it's a consistent thread woven through multiple moments. When you start noticing the same signals repeating in different contexts under different circumstances, you begin to move from guesswork toward clarity. In many cases, people misinterpret signals because they look at them in isolation. For example, a man might stand close to you at a party simply because the room is crowded. He might smile because he's polite. He might ask how your day was because it's socially expected. None of these gestures by themselves carry much weight. But when the same person consistently chooses the seat nearest to you in multiple settings, maintains eye contact longer than necessary in both casual and formal contexts, and recalls small personal details across weeks or months, that is no longer coincidence. That is a behavioral pattern. Patterns are powerful because they cut through the noise of situational variables. They reveal a person's underlying priorities and tendencies. A single compliment could be courtesy. Repeated compliments on aspects unique to you suggest focus. An occasional message could be boredom. Consistent, thoughtful communication across time and circumstance suggests genuine investment. The key is to track not just the signals themselves, but their frequency, their context, and whether they intensify rather than fade. One of the clearest indicators of a pattern is repetition without prompting. If a man mirrors your body language in one interaction, it might be unconscious report, but if he does it again and again with small adjustments to match your tone, pace, or posture, it points to a deeper instinctive alignment. Likewise, if he touches his hair once when you walk into the room, it could be coincidence. If he does it every time you enter his proximity, it's a repeated pining signal, a subtle way of presenting himself favorably. Another aspect of pattern recognition is consistency across environments. A man's behavior in a quiet coffee shop might differ from his behavior in a noisy bar simply because of external factors. But if you observe that his attention to you, his tendency to orient his body toward you, and his responsiveness to your words remain constant regardless of location, that consistency carries weight. Patterns that survive environmental changes are the most trustworthy because they are less influenced by the setting and more by genuine underlying feeling. It's also important to look for escalation in patterns. Early on, the signals might be subtle. A glance here, a slight lean forward during conversation. Over time, if interest is genuine, these signals often become more pronounced. The lean might turn into sitting beside you rather than across from you. The glance might become sustained eye contact followed by a smile. The occasional check, it might evolve into regular communication without obvious external triggers. Escalation shows that the attraction is not static. It's developing, and the person is becoming more comfortable expressing it. However, not all patterns are about adding more signals. Sometimes they're about the persistence of key behaviors over time. For example, a man might consistently make the effort to greet you warmly, remember things you've shared, and maintain a physical closeness when possible. The fact that these actions don't fade even after weeks or months can be more telling than any sudden grand gesture. Many people can put effort into early interactions. Fewer sustain that effort over time. Patterns are also about contrast, specifically how someone's behavior toward you compares to their behavior toward others. If a man is equally attentive, tactile, and engaged with everyone in his social circle, then those signals lose specificity. But if you notice that his manner changes around you, more focused, more animated, more willing to linger, that difference is significant. The contrast is often the clearest proof that the behavior is motivated by something unique to your dynamic. Of course, recognizing patterns requires patience and neutrality. If you're too eager to see signs, you might interpret random events as part of a narrative that isn't there. This is why observation over time is so important. Patterns can only be confirmed when they appear across multiple occasions without you manufacturing opportunities for them. Genuine patterns emerge naturally. They don't require constant testing or prompting. One effective way to sharpen your pattern recognition is to mentally log the moments that stand out. No need for a literal notebook, just a conscious awareness. You might recall that he laughed at your jokes more than others did, that he found a way to join your side of the table in 2 different group outings, and that he asked follow-up questions about something you mentioned weeks earlier. Separately, these are pleasant moments. Together they form a web of repeated behaviors that signal sustained interest. Patterns are also resilient to the ebb and flow of life. Everyone has off days, moments when they're distracted, stressed, or simply tired. One muted interaction doesn't erase an entire history of attentive behavior. What matters is whether the signals return once the temporary disruption passes. A genuine pattern might dim briefly, but will reemerge because it's rooted in the person's authentic way of relating to you. The most reliable patterns are those that span different emotional states. If a man shows the same attentiveness when he's relaxed, stressed, happy, or busy, then his behavior is anchored in something deeper than situational convenience. It means you're a consistent presence in his mental landscape, not just someone he engages with when it's easy. It's worth noting that patterns can also serve as a safeguard against overinterpretation. Attraction is often romanticized as a lightning bolt, a single electrifying gesture or look. But the reality is far more gradual. Many people have moments of warmth or kindness toward acquaintances without it meaning romantic interest. Patterns filter out those isolated sparks and reveal whether the warmth is sustained, targeted, and evolving. When you develop the ability to spot patterns, you move from being reactive to being perceptive. Instead of feeling confused by mixed signals in the moment, you can step back and evaluate the overall trajectory of interactions. Is his attention to you becoming more frequent? Are his gestures of care or interest showing up in varied contexts? Do they persist without you having to chase them? These questions help you distinguish genuine interest from fleeting politeness. In a way, pattern recognition is like mapping a constellation. A single star in the sky might be beautiful, but it means little in isolation. Only when you connect multiple stars spread across space and time do you see the larger shape they form. In human interaction, Those stars are individual signals. The constellation they create is the story of someone's consistent intentional interest. The beauty of this skill is that it's transferable. Once you learn to look for patterns, you can apply it not just in romance, but in friendships, family dynamics, and professional relationships. It teaches you to value consistency over intensity and substance over spectacle. Because in the end, anyone can light a firework for a moment. But it's the steady, repeated flame that keeps the connection alive. And in the realm of romantic attraction, that steady flame is often the best sign you'll ever get. Not the grand confession, not the dramatic gesture, but the quiet, repeated actions that over time stop looking like chance and start looking like truth.